All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing one of my all-time favorite novels, and that is The Name of the Rose by Emberto Eco. This came out in 1980. It was a massive blockbuster hit of a book in the 80s, probably one of the best-selling novels in all of the 80s. It just took the world by storm at the time. I remember reading it back then, loving it. I've read it. I think this is my third time reading it. Now, Emberto Eco, he wrote this originally in Italian. This translation is by a William Weaver, and it is a dynamic, dynamite, awesome, exquisite, beautiful translation. I mean, William Weaver himself is just a wordsmith, because some translations of books can just fall flat, just seem so pedestrian and boring. But this William Weaver, he really jazzed the prose of this. And I don't know, I don't know anything about translation. I don't know anything about it. But this guy did it right. I mean, and that's probably why this was such a hit in English, even though it was written in Italian. So, came out in 1980, was translated. Big hit. What's it about? The Name of the Rose. A lot of you probably have read it. Maybe none of you have read it, but let me explain it. It's a book that's set in the 1300s. The year November 1327, to be exact. And it takes place over the span of 7 days. And it's set in an Italian abbey that is perched in the mountains up on a cliff. And it is narrated by the young scribe who follows William of Baskerville around. And William of Baskerville is sort of a noble of sorts, and he is kind of an investigator. He is sent to this abbey for specific purposes, which I will not get into. But what he finds at the abbey is a murder mystery. And this book is set up, each chapter represents one of the 7 days that they are in this abbey investigating this murder. William Baskerville and his young scribe, who we are seeing this whole thing through the eyes of the young scribe. And I mean, when I say young, I mean young, like early 20s. Gosh, maybe even late teens. I can't remember if that age was mentioned. Anyway, young dude. The William of Baskerville, of course, himself is like a dude in his 50s, very distinguished. People know who he is. He's got a bit of a reputation. He shows up day one. Like I said, each chapter represents a day in the life of their investigation into a murder that happens in this abbey. And the number 7 is a symbolic of also like the 7 deadly sins. And, lust, pride, gluttony, all that stuff. So, chapter 1, we get introduced to the scribe, William of Baskerville, as they make their way up the mountainside to this abbey, which is a very dramatic abbey set upon a cliff. I'm assuming, the Italian Alps. It was probably mentioned. It could be the other mountain range that's down below the Alps, in the middle of Italy, and I can't think of that mountain range right off the top of my head. Anyway, it's in the mountains. Let's just say that. And I've been myself to the Italian Alps. In fact, it's my favorite place on the planet. And so maybe I was just assuming it was taking place there because I love that part of the world so much, and I could just picture a lot of the abbeys and castles up on the cliff sides that I saw when I was there. Anyway, they are making their way to this abbey, and one of the things about Emberto Eco's writing, or the translation we get from William Weaver, is every single thing about this landscape and this castle, and every room of, not the castle, but the abbey, every room that we visit in this abbey, every bit of this abbey we visit, the mountains, every character, every wonderfully drawn character in this is lavishly and lovingly described by Emberto Eco and the translator. And it is just so, this is the type of writing I love. I don't mind taking the time to read a page and a half description of the inside of the cloisters, or the inside of, you know, the stable that is the where they keep the horses of the abbey, or the little village that is down below the abbey. I don't mind. And I don't mind when I get a page or so description of each little monk. Some of them aren't little. Each monk that is in the abbey, and it gives me an idea of who these characters are, and every little detail about them. That's the type of writing I love. If you don't like that stuff, you're not going to like this book. You're not going to like this book, because it goes into a lot of that. That's the stuff I love. It's the stuff I drink up. I like it, and I like the fact that William Weaver gave this a lot of style with his translation. And it reads like you are really in a medieval abbey. The word choices that are used, the way that the characters speak to each other, just, it feels like you are dumped into this Gothic, atmospheric, old, creepy abbey where these, I guess there's quite a few monks. I think the abbey, and I wrote it down if I can see my notes in the background here. So the abbey itself has 60 monks and 150 servants. So it's quite a big place. And there's a mysterious library. We get introduced to some of the monks at first and some of the people that run the abbey. And they talk about, well, there was a murder a few days ago, and there was a monk that, we think committed suicide off of the top of one of the towers. And another thing that's great about this book is we get this map of the abbey itself. And so the monk threw himself off of this tower down the cliff, and or so they think. But William of Baskerville is like, it's kind of sus. It's kind of sus. He's like, it's probably a murder because, first of all, he's very good at figuring out the truth just out of the words people speak. And the thing is this mysterious library that's at the top of the tower that the monk allegedly threw himself out of, or someone allegedly threw him out of, that's the only place in the abbey that the William of Baskerville, the investigator, is not allowed to go. And so this, again, he's like, you can't go into the mysterious library. It's too mysterious for you. It's a sacred place. Don't go in there. You can investigate anyone and everything about this abbey, just not that room up there where the dude allegedly was maybe pushed out the window or threw himself out the window. So anyway, this is where our murder mystery springs from. And then we just get to follow William of Baskerville and his young scribe as they interview the different people and go into the different parts of the abbey. And like I said, it's all very cryptic. It's like, is it a murder? Was it a suicide? Is Satan involved? Is there supernatural elements involved? The 7 deadly sins. There's all men in the abbey. Where are the women? There's a village below with women. Do any of those women become involved as characters? And are they seductresses? I mean, what's going on? Is our young scribe gonna fall? Because he's like every other young man. He's like, this abbey's got nothing but dudes, but yet there's girls down in the little village, and I'm, oh my God, what's gonna happen there? And then on day 2, so that's day 1. And that's the setup. That's the setup that we get in the description here. I'm not spoiling anything that wouldn't be spoiled here. Day 2, however, things take a turn for the worst. And there may or may not be more dead people. And then the mystery deepens, and that's kind of what happens. Then our very, very intelligent William of Baskerville has to solve these murders, and his young scribe is sort of a coming of age tale for the young scribe. And which of these monks, or which of the village people, or which of the servants that work in the abbey, who is it that may or may not be a serial killer? And could it even be supernatural, satanic forces at play? It's just a dope fucking book. And they made a movie of it, believe it or not. It was made into a movie starring um, Christian Slater as the young scribe. And this was when Christian Slater got one of his first movies he ever made, back in the late 80s. And then William of Baskerville was played by none other than Sean Connery. And I watched that movie way back when. I haven't seen it since. But there's a few scenes I do remember from that movie, and it was a good atmospheric murder mystery movie with a lot of gothic sort of flavor to it, and it really did the book justice. It followed the book quite well, as I recall. Like I say, I can't remember the movie that much. Anyway, The Name of the Rose, one of the great pieces of literature in the last 100 years. Written in another language that I don't speak, translated by William Weaver into prose that I absolutely loved. And it's a 10 out of 10 novel. And I think anybody that enjoys mysteries, especially murder mysteries, or even historical fiction, would absolutely love this book. And you should give it a try if you haven't already.